Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Other Epic Story Readings. This is the show that complements my vlog, which there's a link to it up there if you're interested in learning about writing and editing tips and tricks. Now that the intro's out of the way, let's get right to the readings. So the last time I left off, the character Delaine is on the run for a crime he did in his town. He has ventured very far up into the mountains, into a cave, where in the middle of the night he thought he heard a creature. It startled him. It'll be back, he thought. It knows where I am now and will seek me out tonight if it is I it wants. Unwilling to stay another night in the haunted mountains, he decided to work his way toward Jin with haste. He couldn't estimate the length of his way through the valleys, but his goal was to get there by sundown. A day was a long time. And what was he to eat? Where would he rest? There was no time for Delaine to consult all his problems. He had not felt such danger since he left North Bourbon. In his calm and exhausted state, Delaine marched across the stony terrain. Lifting his legs over giant pieces of solid earth on an empty stomach was arduous. He was sweating and feeling ill as he picked up his pace, finding that time was passing by too quickly. As suddenly as day broke, night fell. He measured his distance to Jin and compared it to where the sun sat in the sky. Midday, and he was still in the belly of the Jin Valley. It was a daunting labyrinth of gray and a natural corridor through a mountainous landform. His body cried for mercy as he stumbled to his knees at the soft forested rim of the mountains. He crawled upon his knees through the trail from the valley walls leading out into a wooded area. There were no borders. It was the landscape that separated the topography of Jin. Desperate for water and energy, Delaine pulled himself up against a tree and reached for the lowest branch. He brought it down towards him and tasted it with his lips. Only in dire situation does he allow himself to find nourishment in the unknown. He didn't recognize the plant in his far from lucid state of mind, but few floras can be deemed poisonous in the mountain range. Since competition for survival were so scarce in these parts, poison simply never became an evolutionary trait of mountain plants. So he tasted the browning leaf in his mouth before he sucked it dry and swallowed it. His digestive system argued against the choice. The sharp ridge of the plant scratched his throat as it went down. The pain woke him, but did little to cure his hunger and fatigue. He craned his neck upward and saw the sun descending in the western horizon. There, a silhouette of a town was visible. Then he saw the stone crows, which lived in the nest built in higher elevations, fly by, glance at him, and take off for higher ground. He was unable to catch one, but he dreamt on. He had been foolish, running himself too thin too fast. He should have saved some strength to find shelter or to set up camp. He had survived such predicaments before. Each time he swore would be his last, but here he was again. A man in the wild without food, water, and a fire was doomed, especially when there was a shadowy stalker nearby. He imagined the stalker approaching him in the pitch-black cloak of night. It would stand above him, leering over his broken body. Delaine, still alive, but too weak to fight or flee. Its arms are long with slender fingers, he imagined, and they would reach out and touch him, caressing his features, deciding which part of the human carcass tasted best. "No!" he shouted out loud. "I will not die this way." He winced at the anguish, supported by the tree which served an unsatisfactory meal. He readjusted his destination, Jin. "If I shall die," said Delaine, "I shall die there." Somehow he thought that vocalizing his goal would accomplish it for him, but it was not so. There was still a lot of walking left. Walking away from the sun and dragging his feet behind him, Delaine made his way across the dense forest. He lost balance many times, but caught himself on trees before he fell. He dare not think of the promise of making it to Jin, but just to keep moving. The distance was too daunting, but the steps, the small, wobbly steps, those were achievable, and each one brought him closer. Dreary wanderer, a voice from within demanded attention. Do you truly believe Jin will be your salvation? Delaine listened attentively to his subconscious, even though he knew that it had misled him before. Do you not know, it continued in a mocking fashion, that it is a disgraced town full of inconsiderate lowlives? They are dreadful people, those Jin folk. They keep to themselves, haven't you heard? Remember the lessons? Remember the falling? Those of Jim could have helped, but instead chose an apathetic path. What makes you think they would help you now? Aaron Delaine, the salt of the earth. You bring misfortune wherever you go, and now you come to Jin. What more to say? They'll spit on you before they offer you food. They'll piss on you before they give you a home. Maybe it's that leaf you ate. Maybe you are hallucinating, do you think? The voice cackled insincerely. You better watch out. There is no saying how people will react when they see a stranger marching into their town, especially looking like you. A year in the wild, slapped against the open palm of Mother Nature. You don't necessarily look like the most wholesome of characters. Luckily, you still have me looking out for you. Well, said Delaine, trudging ever closer to the town. What do you want me to do then? Here's an advice, old friend, said the voice. Do what you will, but get out of Jin as quickly as possible. Don't announce your reason for drifting. Don't broadcast the fact that you carry a very rare weapon. Not everyone has seen a gun, and such a tool can frighten these quiet folks. You ask for the most generous man in town, and you ask him to let you sleep and eat with the pigs. Disgusting, I know, but it'll get you through the night. Then you beg forgiveness for bothering them. You offer yourself for free labor. Give it a week, and then you tell them you best go on your way, for Jin is not your home. If they are generous people, and if you had done a fair job, then they might insist that you stay and work for them. They will offer a salary, perhaps. If they do, it is your choice to take it or leave it. If not, you kindly ask for some parting provision to get you to the next town. Whatever you do, don't let the desperation get to you. Don't let the gun overpower you. Delaine's thoughts were exhausting. The sun had surrendered to the night, and Delaine was preparing to do the same. The fog had returned, and so had a gust of mid-valley wind. The path to Jin was not illuminated, and he felt as hopeless as he was the night before. He felt more vulnerable on that quiet avenue than he ever had. Guided by nothing more than his intuition, Delaine slipped onto a property led by the noise of some Jin folk. There must have been a lot of hard-working souls that were still muscling away in the darkness of the night, he thought, as he opened the gate to an undefined property. Feeling too tired to care, Delaine would simply have to pardon his rude trespassing when he seized the residence. He crossed a wide field, following the sound that came in the direction of a house, like a beacon in the near distance. He rehearsed the salutation in his mind and prayed that it would get him enough sympathy to be fed. As he approached, the sound of labor stopped. Instead, there was a tense, foggy cloud of reproach that hung in the air. He was reluctant to take another step, but take another step he must. His heart was the only muscle that seemed to be filled with energy. Before he had a chance to think about retreating, he heard a woman's voice calling. Not to him. Hello? It echoed. Is someone there? Bernard? Was it Delaine she was calling? He could not be sure. Perhaps it was simply the wife calling for the husband, or not. Delaine wanted to reply, but suddenly he found his voice too weak and hoarse to speak, let alone call through the night. So, now he weighed the options one last time. To meet them head-on as a mute stranger traveling from afar, or abandon the plan and rot upon the street and be discovered dead upon sunrise. He regretted not picking the ladder. Of course, that thought happened after he was struck in the head with a wooden bucket of rock cheese and plummeted to the ground, losing consciousness and dropping his gun and the rest of his belongings.